Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to News and Views with me, Zahira Bam Ismail. My first guest for today is a friend, Bilal Abdul Kareem, coming to us live from Azaz in Syria. Assalamu alaikum, Bilal. Welcome to the studios.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm really glad to be here. As you mentioned before we went on, this has been long overdue.
Alhamdulillah, you are living in Azaz in Syria. Tell me first how you ended up there. You're a journalist. What are you doing in Syria for all these years?
Well, I came here originally just to document the events which were happening here. The government of Bashar al-Assad was literally raining down bombs where more than 1 million people have been killed. Um, More than half of the 26 million population has been either externally or internally displaced. So I came to document those war crimes and to give a voice to the voiceless. That was supposed to be that was supposed to be a 2-week assignment. Of course, I haven't been here all that time, but I have come and gone, and I've decided that this is a fight worth fighting, and this is the way that I help to fight it.
Alhamdulillah. I think, we always have plans, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has His own plans for us. And may He always use you where you are most needed. You mentioned 13 million being displaced and over 1 million being killed. And I think those numbers are astronomical. And we went through a phase where you saw Syria was in the forefront, and then it fell back in the news. And I always worry that with whether it's with NPOs or people working around there, we tend to follow a fashionable trend of where difficulties are lying, and then we seem to forget about it. What is the current situation that is being faced in Syria right now?
Okay, before I actually talk about what the current situation is, I kind of want to address something that you just made mention of. Um,
Please do.
you will find that Syria will be in the forefront of the media. Everybody be talking about it, and people be looking for ways to solve the issues and how to deal with it. But as time progresses, people become disenfranchised. They become bored. Another bombing by Bashar al-Assad. Seen that before. Rebels fighting amongst one another. Next, and then they move on. This is what has put our Muslim lands in a perpetual state of decline, because in actuality we're only staying for as long as international media will allow us to stay, meaning as long as it's a story, as long as CNN, ABC, BBC, and such like that are interested, then the ummah stays interested.
Mhm.
Once they lost interest, they stop broadcasting it, we have a tendency to go in the direction where most mainstream media is going. And it just goes from one place to another. Therefore, the pressure on the powers that be to help to solve these issues, it's really not there,
Mhm.
because it's not being. Is Bashar al-Assad continuing to continuing to kill Syrians? Absolutely. The last 6 months, as you made mention, have seen an uptick in violence that hasn't been there for quite some years. But there are other actors that are here. The Iranians, they are, and their militia squads are here. The Israelis are bombing the Iranians. The Americans are here also, making sure that nobody benefits from the oil fields. You have the Kurdish militia forces, which are here imprisoning men, women, and children with no opportunity to free themselves because there's no judicial process. And these Kurdish militias are backed by the US and the UK financially, and they're non-state actors. They're not Syrian government. They're not Turkish government. They're non-state actors, and they're backed by the US and the UK. Now, when you have all of that going on and no real media attention on it, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think the result is going to be? It's going to be mass slaughter. It's going to be plundering of resources, or the keeping of the resources from actually benefiting the people in the population. And that's the mess that we have here. Alhamdulillah, there appear to be some movement where the people have basically said that they've grown tired of the injustices which are taking place in the northern territories, meted out by groups like Hayat Tahrir Sham, and they've taken to the streets again. And a popular movement appears to be budding. Will it continue? We're not really sure. Will it get media attention across the world? It won't, because there are other uh, issues which are in the forefront right now. And I'm afraid that once those other issues, i.e., Gaza, once the major networks become bored with that, or something happens in Ukraine or Congo or and such like that, they'll move on from there too, and the issues actually never get solved.
Absolutely. Brother Bilal, you've touched on so many topics just right there. And I think this is what we started off the show with, that we don't realize to what extent we can control the narrative. But and you're absolutely spot on by saying we follow where mainstream media seems to lead us, to tell us what is important, what are ongoing issues. And it's time that needs to stop. There are so many of us around the world. We have our phones. You want to change the narrative, start changing it amongst ourselves. We have journalists, credible journalists like Brother Bilal, staying in countries like this, that are willing to give you the news, that are willing to actually provide the information, and we need to be able to give it, take it from there and pass it forward. Brother Bilal, you just mentioned now countries like the US, the UK, Iran, Israel, Kurdish movements are all actively still impacting on Syria. And again, there's no accountability for these countries coming into foreign countries, literally messing it up to an absolute extent where the local people living there have no access to resources, have no access to a dignified life. And we all just sit back waiting for them to decide when it's okay, or calling out what should be done, or when it should be done, how it should be done. Where does accountability for these international countries actually lie? Is there even accountability for the things that they do?
No. Is that clear enough? No, there
Yeah.
isn't accountability. Look, to be real with you, I'm going to say this, and I don't know if all the viewers are going to be comfortable or like what I'm getting ready to say, but I'm going to tell you what I would really like to see this year. This year in Ramadan, particularly the brothers and sisters in South Africa are some of the most generous people when it comes to financially donating towards alleviating the suffering of the Muslims. No ifs or ands or buts about that.
Mm.
Okay, I'm not saying that just because I'm talking on a South Africa-based program, but it's real. All right. After having said that, we're going to have to start asking ourselves a question. The Muslim Ummah, year after year after year, whether it's in Palestine, or it's in Syria, or if it's in East Turkestan, or what have you, every year we've got to donate big amounts of money so that Muslims can be buried. We've got to donate large sums of money because Muslims in some places, they don't have food, they don't have water. The issues, we're going to have to start asking ourselves a question at some point. When are we going to start to solve these problems so that we can move forward instead of just trying to tread water or bury our dead in a dignified manner? We've got to move on past this point. I got to tell you, we as an ummah, we've become very, very reactive.
Mm.
We
Agree.
react to these crises, and we react to when things are happening or going on. But we've got to be proactive here. I'm going to tell you, I would love to see one of the businessmen or businesswomen that are out there that instead of donating $1,000, $5,000, or $10,000 to a charity who's going to provide food and aid and such like that. And that's important. I'm going to tell you that. This is important. I'd like to see that money go towards responsible media people and organizations. because we cannot rely on CNN, BBC, ABC, Fox to champion our causes. We cannot continue to go through this year after year because we are the losers. And when we see most of our Muslim based media organizations literally struggling to pay 2 or 3 salaries, struggling to pay an editor, struggling to pay their internet connection. And then we're sitting here and we're saying, why are we not moving forward? It's because we're relying on non Muslims to champion our causes.
Absolutely. Brother Bilal, I think you and I can have an entire conversation on this because I firmly believe that, yes, there is space for the handouts. Yes, there is space for the food deliveries. But what are we doing more? Because over the years, nothing else has changed. We're not changing the face of communities if all we're doing is saying, I've given my handout, tick, box is checked, my conscience is clear. We have to be a lot more conscious in the way we manage the affairs of the Muslim Ummah. And I think you've touched on that very nicely with regards to where we can even start with it. I just want to mention two things because I know we are running short on time. You spoke about the 13 million that are displaced, and just speaking to the comment that you made, I don't know why we have people in European countries, American countries complaining about the influx of people. The truth of it is, if you're not going into their country, they won't have any need to come to yours. So maybe stop getting into their countries. Brother Bilal, I think you've made a very valid point about us raising the voices of the Muslim Ummah, raising it with credible, authentic journalism that is on the ground, that is able to give this information. Tell us very quickly, how are we able to access the information that you provide? How are people that are listening in, that are watching in, able to access daily information from credible sources of what is happening in Syria?
Well, you have different media organizations which are on the ground, but I have to be honest with you and tell you that the resources that journalists have on the ground here in Syria are very, very dismal. And I would love to sit here and tell you that there are these different media organizations and they're well funded and so on and so forth. And therefore, they have the ability to continue to bring you up to date news and information. It doesn't exist. Why doesn't it exist? Going back some years ago, when there was a bigger interest in what's happening in Syria, there was more money for media organizations to be able to function. Now that that's not happening, to be honest with you, in a vast land expanse, fuel to get to back and forth where you need to go, personnel, and so on and so forth. So there are just different organizations like Live Updates from Syria. You have my X, a platform that where people can get information in terms of what's going on here in inside of Syria. But it's not like it was some years ago, where media, like other entities, it has to have finance in order for it to be able to function in an effective way. And that's struggling right now. And the worry is that, and justifiably it should be, the focus is now on Gaza. And that's where it should be. But now, what will happen to Gaza in 6 months? It won't be rebuilt in 6 months, but people will be tired of talking about it because mainstream media will be tired of reporting it. And therefore, Gaza will stay broken, busted, problems unsolved, and without the necessary media attention that needs to be shined on it, because the world will have moved on. I say, let the world move on, but let the Muslims stay right where they need to be.
Shukran. I think that's the perfect words to end this off. As the world moves on, the Muslims need to be focused on where they need to be. And I think, again, it needs to remind us of who we are, what we're capable of doing, and how much power we actually have within each of us. I'll be posting up Brother Bilal's details. You are welcome to follow him, get in touch, and try and actually make sure these stories come alive again. Let's put money back where it also needs to be, so that Muslims around the world are all being taken care of in some way or the other, and not just forgotten until the Western media decides the story becomes fashionable again. Brother Bilal, it's absolute pleasure to share the platform with you. I'm really looking forward to doing this again with you in future. You and I have a lot to discuss, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. But shukran so much for your time. May Allah keep you safe, and may Allah always keep you where you are most needed. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And the same to you. Salam to all the brothers and sisters there in South Africa. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We'll be taking a very quick ad break and then coming back to continue with the rest of the show.